don't see anything on my teleprompter. Where's my teleprompter? Thank you. Good evening. I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Welcome to the series on the network of global corporate control. Today's segment is live and will answer some questions raised recently. Thanks to DCTV, to Carmen Stanley, studio producer and director, Mo Jackson, audio and teleprompter, and Cruchet Starnes, floor director. This is the first live segment since the Christmas break. Over the break, we aired 3 pre-recorded segments on the Moors, the Jesuits, and the fact that we're living in interesting times. For the last year and a half, I've been answering the comments from the archives that are uploaded after these broadcasts in emails, tweets, and my Facebook pages. There's active interference. Some of your comments do not reach me. Some of the links on the comments I post are broken. I posted more information showing how Google was created by the CIA this past week. This attempt at censorship is backfiring. We're going to continue to work together and will persist so that we find a way to get through to each other unhindered. One of the lessons I learned was when someone sent me a message, TLDR. I found out this meant too long, didn't read. I answered the message with a picture that I hope you're seeing on your screen. We're in a big dialogue on the internet. I tweeted, "All the world's a stage," and "This truth is keeping us out of World War III," about the fact that Vladimir Putin had worked for the KGB. You remember all of the intelligence agencies are really working for the network of global corporate control out of Switzerland. So one of my followers, Fab5, tweeted a picture in response, which I hope you see a picture of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin. The last live segment on December 13th let Joseph Dunford Jr., the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, know that the people in the U.S. did not consent to secret martial law. After calling out General Dunford for his and the Joint Chiefs of Staff's treason, I have not heard a peep from General Dunford nor from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Martin Dempsey ducked point-blank questions about the United States monetary gold reserves in 3 town hall meetings. Veterans Today went back and erased the questions after they were posted. My tweets to the Joint Chiefs of Staff are there for everyone to see, along with the commercial liens which I have now put on General Dunford, D.C.'s Mayor Muriel Bowser, the acting police chief of D.C., Peter Newsom, the Adjutant General of D.C., Renwick Payne, and Donald Trump. I'll forward you the DCTV segment on commercial liens so that you understand how powerful this common law instrument is. And you can also get that link from the teleprompter, which I post after the segments. All of these persons have betrayed the people of the United States by refusing to acknowledge that the Constitution of 1789 has been suspended in a state of emergency ever since 1871. It's the U.S. Congress that's doing that. The banking cartel is now holding title to people's property in the United States using war powers against the people in the United States. On January 3rd, after the final notice and default, I tweeted the commercial liens that I mailed as overseer mandate trustee concerning the United States and rest of the world's monetary gold reserves to Donald Trump, Joseph Dunford, Renwick Payne, Muriel Bowser, and Peter Newsham. These traitors already got 2 earlier notices and didn't bother responding. The culprits who are trying to prevent the global currency reset from happening owe us. And Plato said, I may assume that your silence gives consent. And when you've got a commercial lien against you and an affidavit, you're obligated to answer or you're forfeiting all of your money. That's why these culprits are now bankrupt. For 3.5 years, I've been fighting this world corruption and state capture in the United States. This reality is hard for some people to swallow, especially if they're hearing it for the first time. It's quite different from the lies that people have been hearing from the corrupt media. And there's a clip, which I hope you can run right now, which will show you what was happening 3 years ago.
In the spring of 2013, you were arrested at a World Bank meeting. What were the circumstances that led to the arrest, and what was the outcome?
Well, I was arrested illegally. It was because of the corruption that I'm telling you about, because 188 ministers of finance reinstated me. This is because when the Congress approved the capital increase for the World Bank, they put a condition in there. They said, we're not going to disperse the money until the effects of retaliation against World Bank whistleblowers have been eliminated. And Secretary Geithner lied to the appropriations committees back in November. And I went there and I told the appropriations committee, and Secretary Geithner exited stage left right after he had finished lying to Congress. So this is a very serious matter. This is contempt of Congress. So when I went in the spring to the annual meetings, I was going there with the backing of the U.S. Congress. I was going there with the backing of 188 ministers of finance to end the corruption. And the reason that the United States citizens do not know this is because of the corruption. These corrupt entities have bought up their media.
Now, Karen,
and the Americans have been misinformed on very basic, fundamental things about their government. One of the fundamental things that they've been misinformed about is the fact that 49 of the 50 state legislatures have asked for a new constitutional convention. They know about this corruption, and they don't want the consent of the governed to be denied any longer. We're going to fix this problem. We're going to fix it before the dollar goes down.
Now, Karen, you're obviously out there. You're connecting with these people. You are blowing the whistle on corruption at the World Bank. Most people end up in a coffin when they go up against the global banking cartel. Have you experienced any threats on your life or any threats to your livelihood for speaking out in this manner?
Well, let me tell you, it has been the adventure of a lifetime. I was captain of the NYU fencing team, and I learned that the first thing you want your enemy to do is to attack you, because that's when they're on the wrong foot and you come in from the other side. So I had testified in the UK Parliament together with Elaine Colville, who's Scottish. We have the law on our side. We're talking about the rule of law. So every time somebody tries to do something, we catch them red-handed and we tangle them up, and they trip and they fall. So,
well, I mean, but have they overtly threatened you in any manner, or how are they reacting to you blowing the whistle on this?
Okay, most of the whistleblowers are in a situation where they're trying to reveal information. I am trying to end a cover-up. So I'm in a much stronger situation, and these crooks knew that if anything happened to me, the cover-up was going to end. I hired a PR guy, Larry Garrison, and they knew that if anything happened to me, this...
In the spring of 2013, you were arrested at a World Bank meeting. What were the circumstances that led to the arrest, and what was the outcome?
Well, I was arrested illegally. It was because of the corruption that I'm telling you about, because 188 ministers of finance reinstated me. This is because when the Congress approved the capital increase for the World Bank, they put a condition in there. They said, we're not going to disperse the money until the effects of retaliation against World Bank whistleblowers have been eliminated. And Secretary Geithner lied to the appropriate
from the letter. And it went to his office at the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the Pentagon. Dear General Dunford, on the 7th of October 2015 at the World Bank and IMF annual meetings in Lima, I met with India's Minister of Finance and former Minister of Defense, His Excellency Arun Jaitley, and Malawi's Minister of Finance, His Excellency Goodall Gondwe, and 20 other missions. During those meetings, we agreed that any country which disagrees with my statements on behalf of the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF concerning the global debt facility containing the world's monetary gold reserves and other assets must go on record in writing. I confirmed this arrangement with the New York missions and Tokyo embassies. Prior to this, I had been clearing in advance the statements that I made on behalf of the Board of Governors, as when I issued a press release, and the link to the press release was removed from the internet, so I posted it, and you'll see that in the teleprompter. This was not necessary when I invalidated attempts to steal the world's assets in the global debt facility. After the India-Africa Summit, I informed Texas and the Joint Chiefs of Staff of my understanding with the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. I broadcast this understanding with the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF on the November 10th episode of DCTV's Network of Global Corporate Control. And I've given you in the teleprompter exactly where you can find that. And on other websites. I wanted to thank Silver Doctors for bringing my comment on Alasdair Macleod's economic doomsday scenario out of moderation last week. This is after I posted the comment in my social media and it was retweeted 16 times. Marshall Swing also persists in ignoring the elephant in the room, the global debt facility containing the world's international monetary gold reserves administered by the Bretton Woods Board of Governors. The global elites are aware that people already know that their media is bought and sold by the network of global corporate control identified by Vitali Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich. It would be kind of nice for Silver Doctors to end your discredited doomsday charade already. The chances that the world's gold comes out of hiding and is deployed to replace that scam called fractional reserve fiat currencies with national currencies minted out of gold and local currencies is over 90%, according to a power transition model from the U.S. Department of Defense. Meanwhile, the Joint Chiefs of Staff know that the loyal military, including the Joint Japan-U.S. Committee under the Status of Forces Agreement, back the monetary agreement to complete what John F. Kennedy and Ronald Reagan set out to accomplish before they were gunned down. And I tweeted that to the Joint Staff, to the India-Africa Summit. Pursuant to the Articles of Agreement of the World Bank, the U.S. President does not appoint the President of the World Bank because the 66-year-old gentleman's agreement ended in 2010. Ever since, I've been working with the Coalition for the Rule of Law on the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF to end the corruption in the international financial system. Under Section 4 of Article 5 of the Articles of Agreement of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, the Board of Executive Directors is responsible for the conduct of the general operations of the World Bank. the United States Executive Director, Mr. Matthew McGuire, is in breach of the World Bank's Articles of Agreement and has no further role to play in the global currency reset. I refer to my letter to the Development Committee of December 28, 2015, and my email to the chair of the Development Committee, which was confirmed the following day on DCTV and tweeted. I also refer to the statement 4 minutes into the broadcast. Quote, "You have not heard from any country denying that I speak for the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF." Close quote. The network of global corporate control identified by Vitaly Glatfelder and Battiston of ETH Zurich interrupted the live streaming to censor that statement. Now the network of global corporate control is breaking my links, which I simply repost. The whole world is sick and tired of the network of global corporate control and its paper currency scam. Pursuant to Article 5 of the 1789 Constitution of the United States, there was to be a convention to consider the application of more than two-thirds of the state legislatures. Upon the failure of the U.S. Congress to convene this convention, your secret military rule is nothing other than an interregnum in the legitimate government of the United States. I informed you of the fact that you have usurped power and your military rule has no legitimacy. The Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF are exchanging Federal Reserve notes for the Treasury dollars printed by Ronald Reagan, held by the Global Debt Facility. And during this interregnum, you have no authority to disrupt that procedure so that the Federal Reserve notes can crash and unilaterally surrender United States military might. That's the end of my letter to General Dunford. So much for that traitor, General Dunford. How do we know that General Dunford is not going to get away with this? It's easy peasy. Because our allies, Germany and Japan, will make certain that the United States remains strong so that the U.S. can honor our treaties of defense with Germany and Japan. I know this from the power transition model that came to the World Bank in 2004 from the United States National War College. The track record of the power transition model is over 90%. Now let's talk about that traitor, Donald Trump. I would like to answer the first question, which followed the DCTV segment on the Moors. You will remember that the Moors were the tolerant group in North Africa who preserved mathematics and the knowledge about the Greek civilization, which was lost and then blossomed during the Renaissance. The question was, Karen, what's your evidence to support the assertion that Donald Trump has an ongoing campaign aimed at dividing the country along racial lines? YouTube promptly erased my answer to this question, which I then published on my social media. And I say, if this isn't the racial card pitting black against white Americans after Trump's election, I don't know what is. And I've showed a story in the Atlantic, which is a dead giveaway. I don't know if you've got a copy of the cover story. Just like the involvement of the Southern Poverty Law Center, which was also dragged into combat trying to incite the patriot community. The Southern Poverty Law Center are provocateurs who try and make it look like they're patching things up when what they're really doing is leaving a trail of hatred. We are going to try and heal these wounds when the Constitution of 1789 goes back into effect, along with the now defunct Bill of Rights. That's right, our Bill of Rights are not there for us now. You remember Ann Aiken, the judge, the federal judge who sentenced the Hammonds. The disagreement with the patriot community over grazing rights and Second Amendment rights is another area where the Jesuits are trying to rip the social fabric of the United States. Judge Aiken was not presiding over a court under Article 3 of the Constitution. That's because the banking cartel suspended the Constitution of 1789 when the Revolutionary War debts fell due in 1871. The banking cartel is collecting premiums on bonds for the judges' oaths of office, although the policies are not being issued. The Hammonds are going to be getting out of jail just as soon as we restore the Constitution of 1789, which the banking cartel secretly suspended. We're talking about how to exchange the world's monetary gold reserves. As overseer mandate trustee of these monetary gold reserves and other precious metals, gemstones, and artworks, I vote the United States 16.5% shares on the World Bank and International Monetary Fund Board of Governors. On November 8th, the United States had bogus elections without its Constitution of 1789 being in effect. On the day before Christmas, an agent of the banking cartel asked me to give Donald Trump a chance. I answered that this was not an option. I stated that there was no consent for the United States to be governed by secret martial law. Until the Constitution of 1789 is back in force and effect under an Article 5 Constitutional Convention, the United States is in interregnum. I also want to discuss my answer to an email which Wolfgang Struck sent to me at the end of last year. Wolfgang had copied Ivanka Trump, and so did I. Just some background on my exchange of emails with Wolfgang. Wolfgang Struck is working for the banking cartel. Wolfgang had emailed me several days before, to which I responded, and that was on the 26th. Wolfgang, you think people are not going to figure out that the bloodline families hiding behind the Jews have anything to do with anything? You think that the World Bank's member countries are not going to know that the people in the United States want their Constitution back? You think people are so afraid to think that they'll continue to allow the Jesuits to control their knowledge of history? You think the conditions that the coalitions that the War College power transition model predicted are not real. You seem to think that people cannot think. There may be military mind control technology, but people know about it, as witnessed by this video, which I've been tweeting about on the internet for the last 10 days, and I'd like to run that video.
Minister obrony mówił o zagrożeniach innych niż te unijne.
Czy państwo polskie posiada strategię wobec nielegalnych badań, to znaczy testowania broni elektromagnetycznej na polskich obywatelach?
Teraz takie analizy robimy, żeby zidentyfikować, gdzie są ludzie, którzy skarżą się na tego typu dolegliwości i tego typu sytuacje. Myślę, że za jakieś pół roku będę mógł pani odpowiedzieć coś więcej, ale powtarzam, z tych ułamkowych informacji, które do mnie dotarły, Dolny Śląsk, okolice Legnicy i ziemia zachodniopomorska to są główne obszary, gdzie takie skargi, nasilenie tych skarg jest największe.
Minister obrony nie sprecyzował, jaka komisja albo zespół przygotują raport na temat eksperymentów na Polakach z użyciem broni elektromagnetycznej. Jakub Sobieniowski, Faktem.
Back to the letter to Wolfgang Struck. Dear Wolfgang, I did not make you signatory, and you know this. You will be authenticated, possibly going forward on a transaction-by-transaction basis, and we're going to use one of the alternative signatories for sure, unless you're prepared to acknowledge in advance that you will accept transaction-by-transaction basis and a fee of 1/4 of 1%. that's set out in the monetary agreements. I'm overseer mandate trustee of the Global Debt Facility because of what the Board of Governors and Chinese and other potential signatories have written to me, and also because nobody has objected, although they had every opportunity to do so. These assets were insured and will be recovered for the benefit of the beneficiaries, which is humanity. Now I'm going to stop reading from my email to Wolfgang Struck in order to give our newer listeners some background. The amount of gold and other assets we're talking about is taken from an inventory list of the world's wealth in the Global Debt Facility. The Global Debt Facility is a trust that Ferdinand Marcos, lawyer for the Superior General of the Jesuits, known as the Black Pope, Jose Rizal, set up at the end of World War II. You'll be able to see this inventory list from the teleprompter, which I publish before and after the broadcasts. This wealth includes over 1,700,000 metric tons of gold and over $2 quadrillion worth of bonds and accrued interest that were issued by the Federal Reserve Bank in the 1930s. Wolfgang Struck had tried to sell these bonds at a steep discount, and I refused to approve this transaction. Instead, these bonds are going to offset country debt. From the Grace Commission study that Ronald Reagan commissioned, we know that the Internal Revenue Service is forwarding these payments to the network of global corporate control. Okay, back to my email to Wolfgang Struck, and I copied it to Ivanka Trump. Quote, "You keep on talking about Jewish bankers. We both know what part the pharaonic nobility and bloodlines have played." This is to Ivanka Trump, if indeed she reads this from the email address that Wolfgang used in his email to me, or from the internet. From the commercial lien which the Global Debt Facility and I am holding, your property, all of it, is forfeit because of the fraud that your husband is committing on the American people. Best. And then I signed it as acting general counsel of the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development and overseer mandate trustee of the Global Debt Facility. Judging from the number of broken links, one of the biggest secrets that the banking cartel is trying to hide is the head of the snake. It's not Rockefeller or Rothschild, although these two are certainly culprits, but it's the Swiss octagon, ruled by the pharaonic bloodline families and descended from the Knights Templar. This is the group that brought us World War I and World War II, which dropped the atom bomb on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and which is collecting all of our income taxes as interest on bogus country debt. That's right. And let's talk about the model developed at the National War College that predicts how coalitions will form using game theory and opinions from experts about the positions of stakeholders, which are groups that influence a problem. The power transition model is 90 to 95% accurate. I'm also giving you links to 2 talks by the political scientists who developed the model for Ronald Tamman, who was the chair of the Department of National Strategy and professor of national strategy at the National War College at the time. The banking cartel is insolvent. The world's assets remain with the Global Debt Facility administered by the Board of Governors of the World Bank and IMF. As predicted by the power transition model, we remain on track to take back our world. There's a coalition consisting of the world's people who are replacing paper currencies with aurum, that's gold, and offsetting country debt against the $2 quadrillion in Treaty of Versailles bonds. You can see the proof of this reality in 2 ways. Bertrand Badré, as acting president of the World Bank after Jim Kim was really fired by the Board of Governors, tried to arrest me. I'm not arrested. I'm here. Reality is a lot better than you think. And we're now scrolling for the outro. Thank you for listening to another segment of the network of global corporate control. Some of the worst liars, like General Dunford and Donald Trump, are silent in the face of my serious accusations. These men are now bankrupt. Some of the viewers have been hearing the truth now for a year and a half. Some of them figured it out on their own, and some of you may be hearing it for the first time. You're bound to have more questions. Until next week, I'm your host, Karen Hudis. Thank you.